I'm Alec, and I'm here at the Troubadour for A Fistful of Vinyl with Laura Jane Grace.
Hi.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
It's been, do you remember our interview from 4 years ago we did in the green room at the Roxy?
Vaguely. We did 2 nights at the Roxy then. I remember those shows, and I remember them being kind of whirlwind, to say the least.
Okay,
yeah.
cool. I was the guy in his mid-20s who was really nervous about everything.
Cool, sweet.
I think we've gotten a little bit better since then.
Older, wiser now?
I hope those two correlate. You know, at the very least, I've refined my self-deprecation to make it sound like I don't just have terrible self-esteem anymore. That was kind of the bit we were writing last time. Now it's like, wait a minute, we're actually kind of good at what we do. We should stop telling people we suck at it.
Self-confidence.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So I have lots of very well-formed, articulate questions for you, and but at the same time, I want to treat this as much like a conversation as possible.
Okay.
I'm really excited to see you've released your first true solo record as Laura Jane Grace. And I was reading, I think, in Guitar World that as we were kind of approaching the last 2 Against Me records, they were becoming more and more of like a collaborative effort between you and the band. Mm-hmm. Is this album meant to be sort of like a return to like your solo voice or your individual voice, whereas Against Me is moving in a more collaborative direction?
I think it's more that like after the fact, when you make a record or music, then people want you to define it and say why you did it and what it is, and that's not something really that was ever in your mind when you're doing it, you know? So with these songs, like I had been working on these songs for about a 2-year-long period, and for a number of reasons, it just didn't make sense to do them as Against Me.
Right.
But, you know, like with Adam, who's playing in the band, and with Mark as well, like Adam plays in Against Me. Mark recorded the last couple Against Me records at his studio in Michigan. So it's all still part of the same family. And like with the last Against Me record with Shapeshift With Me, like Mark has 2 writing credits on that record. Mm-hmm. So it just kind of was like a natural continuation of it, you know?
So as far as separating this from the rest of Against Me's music, what would you feel is like the most characteristic difference that made these songs that needed to be performed as a solo act?
Jeez, I don't know. Yeah, like I can tell you the whole story of how it all came together. So like in 2015, I was finishing up doing a book, and by that point, I had been sitting in front of a computer for like 3 years every day working on like just typing and typing, and I was losing my mind. So I got the idea that I wanted to go out on the road and try songs out in front of people, or try like what I was working on out in front of people. So booked this like 2-week-long tour of the East Coast where I was doing a mix of spoken word stuff that would become the book, and then playing Against Me songs in a more stripped down like version. And so I asked Adam and Mark to come along on the tour with me, and you know, we're out on tour, and I'm like, well, we're a band, this needs a name, we're not Against Me, we should call it something. So we came up with the name The Devouring Mothers. So the tour went really well, and the summer after that, we went into Mark's studio, and just for fun, we recorded like 15 Mountain Goats covers. And that went really well. We're like, oh, we record really well together, this was a great experience, we should like do a proper record. So a year later, that summer of 2017, or 2018, summer of 2018, right? We went back into Mark's studio, and we had songs, and we spent a week and we just recorded the songs. So it was like, you know, I really wanted an experience that was like different from the last Against Me record, and that I didn't want to spend a month in the studio. I didn't want to belabor everything. I just wanted to know the songs really well, go in and start recording and do it as quick as possible. So that's what we did.
That's really cool. And it sounds like in that way then touring with the songs kind of helped hone them, so you didn't need to do the whole like studio refinement process. You kind of came in with a good idea of what they were supposed to be at that point, yeah?
We were well prepared, but we had like been getting together every 2 weeks or so, them all coming to Chicago or us all going to Michigan and working on songs, and we did that for like a good 6-month period before we, you know, went into the studio, so we were ready. But part of the reason that it wasn't Against Me record was because that was the way the songs were coming together, was that it was me and Mark and Adam getting together and working on songs. And at first we were doing that under the guise of it being the next Against Me record.
Sure.
But, you know, as a lineup change happened within Against Me, with Andrew coming back into the band and Inge leaving, it just felt right to like reset, and it felt untrue to the songs to just like plug Andrew and James in and be like, now they're Against Me songs, see you later, Mark, you know, like, yeah. Or relegate Mark back to behind the console, you know? So it just seemed like that was the thing. And also like, I just wanted to do it. I got it stuck in my head where I wanted to like release a record on my birthday this last year and play some shows, like, and do kind of a residency in Chicago where we'd play a different venue in Chicago every weekend. So I wanted to release a record on my birthday, and I wanted to play shows in November, and that was like my only goal and vision. And then we accomplished that, and then it was like, oh well, let's book a North America tour, and you know, we're slowly working on another Against Me record, and that'll hopefully be finished by the end of the year. But in the meantime, I wanted to go out and play shows. I feel a lot more inspired when I'm working and when I'm traveling and moving, you know?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, getting the context of a bunch of different experiences in a bunch of different cities, and then kind of figuring out what's relevant from there and bringing it back together at the end of it. It's not an experience I have, but I imagine it's enlightening.
There's like there's also like, it felt like there was like a pressure as far as it being like the next Against Me record will be the 8th Against Me record.
Sure.
So like lyrically it felt like, oh, you know, where does this narrative fit into everything? And I just didn't want to think about it like that. I just wanted to write songs and not have them held up to like where they fit into a catalog or anything like that. It's strange because like I've been feeling like in the post after making the record, after recording the record and it being a really amazing experience and all that part, that the actual press for the record I'm having a hard time with, where it's like, you know, it's one thing to be good at playing your instrument, one thing to be good at writing songs, performing the songs, and then this whole other thing of like selling the songs.
Yeah.
Of being like, can you tell a compelling story to frame these songs and stuff? And sometimes it's like, no, I can't. I just don't have a compelling framework to put this in. I just hope the songs stand on their own, you know? And I think that's okay.
Yeah, I guess it raises the question, does there need to be like a connective tissue or a compelling story behind it, or is it okay to say, these are all songs that just kind of came out one at a time? It's, if anything, a tour record is a compelling story.
Right, and you know, for me, it's like, it is like journal entries, and it is like a period of time in my life that I can look at as like, that's when we were making that record, and I know where these songs came from. I know where I was when I wrote that song or this song, and I can look back on that, and it has a lot of meaning to me. And that might not be apparent to other people, but like, also you don't need to beat people over the head with like, this needs to mean this to you. Yeah. This is what this song means. Just let people interpret it on their own sometimes, you know?
Yeah, most artists that I've talked to are much more a fan of just letting people believe anything about their songs that they connect with or that kind of resonates with them, as opposed to like prescribing the meaning beforehand.
Sure. I'm kind of in this trap too right now, where because I, you know, after coming out as trans, after like writing a book that's a really personal book and having all these like articles that frame me as like, you know, like getting personal, finally being true, something like that, blah, 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 blah. It's like, your most personal record yet, the most personal Against Me record yet. And it's like, there's a limit to that, you know, like how personal can it get? You know, like they're all personal to me, but like in a media framing it context, like that's a narrative that like just runs its course, and you're not gonna be able to take that any further after a point. And I don't wanna be like bound to that, you know?
Well, I guess and let me know if this feels like it resonates, but if you're, you know, as everyone's identity grows and changes, and you know, yours went through a particularly dramatic transition, it seems like that each, you know, subsequent record has more space for like a definition behind it. You know, if every record is somebody saying, this is where I am at this point, I would venture to say that by, you know, transitioning your gender expression, you've given it a lot more material or a lot more context for why you'd be writing a personal record. That feels like it didn't make sense. Did that scan, or should I try again?
Try it again.
Okay. Let's say somebody gets, you know, 2 years between records, and they have 2 years of experience in those records. The amount of life that they experience in 2 years, we can say that there's an average. I think changing genders is above what is considered average as far as life experience goes. So it seems like we could say that any record that came after that or came after that transition would have that amount of experience coming with it, and could, you know, I don't know, be more of a definitive record for who you are at that time.
Sure, but that's not something that's conscious that you can tap into. It's not like I can open up my box of life experiences and take out 3 bars as opposed to only 1 bar. You know,
Fair.
like it's just, it's not something that's apparent to you when you're in the process. You know, it doesn't dictate the way I would live my life or who I am as a person. It's more of someone else's perspective on the way it is or who I am, you know?
Do you identify with the music that you wrote earlier in your career, but do you consider those songs? Do you consider those Laura Jane Grace songs?
I really don't like talking about it in that way. I mean, like it's oddly. I don't like to be dead named in general, but it's like it's all just me. Like it's not like all of a sudden I like became a different person. It's all of a sudden you perceived me as a different person. I've always been me, and I've always known who I was. I just wasn't necessarily sometimes forthright with that.
Certainly, and my apologies. I'm doing my best to frame this in a way that's studying as much as I can. Let me see. Let me take a beat. I feel like I offended you right there. I'm going to take a second and try to collect myself, if that's cool. The last time I interviewed you, we talked about kind of the role of politics in music. Do you feel like there's still sort of a political heartbeat to the music that you're writing today?
I don't care. I like it's not something that I feel like I wake up and I'm like, I need to make sure this is political. I just don't think in those terms, to me, I do believe, to quote Ian Mackay, your emotions are nothing but politics to gain control. The personal is the political. And that's one thing that I feel like is different, being older than when you're younger, is that the world feels a lot more like black and white and clear cut when you're younger, and you feel like you have the answers. And I'm fine with, now being older and being like, I don't know, I don't have it all figured out. I only know my experiences and the way that I can relate to them. And if there's politics behind that, then there's politics behind it. But trying to work within this box and this framework of is this political, this is political and this is not political, and separate between the two, it's that's just so restrictive and suffocating in so many ways,
Well, I suppose especially since if you combine the personal and the political, any record that's personal would have not necessarily a political heartbeat in the way that I framed it, but would have that personal perspective on whatever element of politics is influencing your life at that time. And insofar as punk is meant to be political, or let me see if I can reframe that. Do you feel like the definition of punk has expanded to contain both the personal and the political? Insofar as you can define punk.
There, I mean, there's so many different aspects of punk rock, and there's so many different bands that represent punk rock, dating back to the first wave of punk bands that didn't necessarily have overtly political lyrics, more had personal lyrics, or on the flip that had really overtly political lyrics. I don't know if I would call the Ramones a political band. I don't think I would at all. But would you call them a personal band? Would in this day and age, if the Ramones were releasing a record, would the descriptive be their most personal effort yet? Joey, this is your most personal record to date. I don't think they'd care, or I don't think that it works like that. But at the same time, the Ramones did have politics. Bongo Goes to Bitburg, is a political song.
Sure.
But it's personal too. There's a personal side to that song, and that's what makes that song great,
So what about the Mountain Goats music resonated with you that made you want to do a Mountain Goats cover record?
We were on tour with Green Day in 2016, and it was a big, ridiculous arena tour. So there's we're the opening band. We play for a half an hour. So there's lots of time backstage where you're just sitting there in an arena and you're nowhere near anywhere in town. So I wanted to be productive with my time instead of just sitting there looking at my phone. So I was I'm going to learn a Mountain Goats cover a day. So it was a month-long tour. I learned something 35 Mountain Goats covers. And then at the end of that, I was well, now I want to do something with these songs. So then we recorded some of them. But it was an interesting study with the Mountain Goats in particular, just because John Darnielle tends to use the same chord progressions, but at the same time, they never sound like the same song. And it's really refreshing to remember that sometimes, where that's a roadblock I hit as a writer, where I'm I've already used that progression, or I can't write another song starting out with C and then going to F. But the truth is, you can just do that a million times, and you can make it a different song every time. And that's where the talent and the craft and the trick lies, So breaking down another artist's work is, I think, really valuable in that way. I did the same thing with Tom Petty when he passed away, and just realizing how many of his greatest hits and classic songs aren't complicated. They're not complicated chord progressions, and it's the vocal melodies that you put on top of that and the cadence to the lyrics that really brings the intricacies into it.
damn, I 100% had like a, I know what I'm going to ask next. It's
Roll
totally
the
right.
die. No.
We're getting there. When you mentioned the kind of simplicity of Mountain Goat's chord shapes and Tom Petty's chord shapes, I know from watching a lot of your performances that you use kind of a lot of complex or unconventional chord shapes. Do you bring that to your Mountain Goats covers, and two, how much of an intentional decision is that, or is it more just kind of an exploration of how to get different sounds out of the same instrument?
I guess it's an exploration to get different sounds out of the same instrument. I took piano lessons a couple years back where I found, I was living in St. Augustine, Florida at the time, and I found like the quintessential little old lady who taught piano from her house. And I went there and I was like, I'm technically a professional musician, but if you could teach me like I'm 5, just start over.
Yeah.
And that was a really valuable exercise. Like, I'm a terrible piano player, but just being able to see chords laid out in a different way and the way that different phrasings sound, that's valuable in translating that to the guitar and realizing you can do the same things with guitars. But oftentimes, especially with like older songs where I was like, oh, I think I just invented a chord, when it really was like a G chord just phrased in a different way, and I didn't realize it. So it's overcomplicating something that doesn't need to be complicated.
Well, it sounds like there's also like the personal challenge element of it too, where you don't, if you're conscious of songs that contain the same 3 chords, you're conscious of when you can kind of deviate from that, I would think. Yeah.
Sure.
I remember trying to learn one of your songs a long time ago, and ultimately kind of getting down on myself and just going for the open chord shapes at capo 5, just because I was like, I'm not there yet.
I started leaning on capos a lot, and it's great when you're in the studio, but when it comes to like being on stage and having to switch around a capo real quick and do tunings, it's a nightmare. But
yeah. I'm remembering another one of the things that you told us in our last interview, that the music that you were writing at the time, and kind of as more of like the lifeblood of folk punk, was something that could be performed on a street corner or on a stage and scaled equivalently. Do you still write music with that in mind?
Yeah, I still like just operate with that in mind too, where like, on this tour right now, we're in a van and a trailer, and don't tell people who might be following us, but we leave our guitars in the van in the trailer overnight, right? But I've been bringing my acoustic in every night with the mindset of like, well, if the van gets stolen and all our guitars and gear gets stolen, I will still have my acoustic guitar and I can show up at the gig tomorrow and I can do it. And as long as I have my acoustic guitar with me, everything's all right. The rest of the world can fucking fall apart, but I have my acoustic guitar, so I'll still be able to work.
Yeah, I think that's, I don't know, I wish I had a better perspective as a musician. I grew up playing acoustic guitar, and that's always kind of the thing I return to as well. Mm-hmm. And I agree, there is sort of like an element of like safety to that, or an element of compatibility to that, where whatever situation you're in, an acoustic guitar can lend itself to it. If you're in your living room, sure, you can plug into a small amp, but if you go camping with your friends, like, what are you going to do? Like, bring like
right. Well, you're only limited by your creativity too. It's like flipping that around to like what you all do. It'd be like, as long as I have my iPhone, I could work, because I could videotape this, I can use it as a tape recorder, I could take notes in it, I can answer emails. Like, you have this tool that is only limited by your creativity on how to use it.
It's a good way of looking at it. And speaking of your tools, I know once we get outside of the acoustic realm, I've seen you play a lot of signature instruments, particularly your Rickenbackers. Mm-hmm. I understand you have a collection of those.
I do, yeah.
And I've seen you were on a Jaguar today?
I'm playing a Jaguar and a Jazzmaster, yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, and I've seen you play a Telecaster before, which is currently my most coveted guitar. Yeah. How do you decide what you're going to play each day, or what you're going to record for an album?
Well, oftentimes with recording, it's what sounds best, like both from what has the best crunch or whatever, like tonality, but also like what has the best tuning. And especially if it's like with James or another guitar player and he's playing this guitar, what other guitar stays in tune with that guitar most easily. So like Rickenbackers, recording with Rickenbackers versus a Gibson is a nightmare. The G string is just never in tune with the other G string. So you got to use a Telecaster, because that'll be in tune and it'll be just so much easier, and you'll save yourself a world of time. So oftentimes in the studio it's like that. Live, sometimes you're able to get a little bit away with a little more, and I'll defer to like, well, this guitar just looks cooler, mainly. But I really like Rickenbackers because they look cool, you know. But I don't know, they're kind of like difficult guitars. But I like really believe that guitars have souls, and sometimes a guitar is angry with me, and sometimes the guitar is like really wants to be played. So like with Bot to Rot, the record that we just put out, going back to talking about Tom Petty, in like 2003, I was living in Gainesville, and Stan Lynch, who was the original drummer for the Heartbreakers, he has a music store there, or had a music store there, and every once in a while he would set out his own personal instruments for sale. And so he set out this 1964 Jaguar that I bought off of him, and a twin reverb that I bought off of him.
Yeah.
And the Jaguar was beautiful, mint condition, looked like it had never been played. So I was, of course, terrified to play it then, and just kept it in the case under my bed. And when Tom Petty passed away, I was playing the guitar along to Tom Petty songs in my headphones, little like amp thing that wires you in there. And I was like, damn, this guitar sounds like it could have been used on these records. And then I was like, oh, it could have been used on these records. This was Stan Lynch's guitar. But then I started thinking about it more, where I was like, this is a drummer's guitar. And like, believing that guitars have souls, if you're a guitar that's bought by a drummer, you're bummed, because you're never gonna be on stage and you're never gonna be used in the studio. You're always gonna be a drummer's guitar.
Sure.
So here's this beautiful, beautiful instrument, 64 Fender Jaguar, that has never been used for anything, never toured on, never fucking recorded with. And like, if you're a guitar, you gotta feel so robbed, especially if you were one of the Heartbreakers guitars. So I was like, this is this guitar's moment. This is the record that this guitar was made to record.
Yeah.
I'm gonna use this on every single song. And that played into the idea of Bot to Rot. You know, you like with fruits and vegetables, you buy fruits and vegetables at the grocery store, and then you don't end up eating them, and they just fucking rot, and they go to waste. And so same thing with the guitar. You gotta use it, or the good's gonna be gone.
You know, I love kind of your not just definition, but explanation of the way that instruments have souls. I believe the same thing. I believe lots of objects that we interact with on a daily basis have souls. You know, my car has a soul, my guitar has a soul. But past that, I haven't thought that like those objects have souls beyond my interaction with them. You know what I mean? Like my guitar is named Jane, incidentally, and I guess in a certain way, I feel like when I got Jane, like that's Jane's soul as an extension of me sort of began, and like, you know, I heard her when I actually put her down with the plug-in, and she cracked. She's a ES-175 hollow body. I put her down with the while she was jacked in, and it cracked, and I felt terrible. I felt like I'd hurt like a friend, or like accidentally stepped on a dog or something. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it feels like the identity of that guitar was very much based around my interactions with it. And I like the idea of, I bought that guitar used. That guitar has an identity that I can't even scratch the surface with.
Or a history, yeah.
Yeah.
And like, you know, a guitar different than a car. A guitar was a tree. You know, like a guitar was a living thing. You know, like verifiably it was a living thing.
Yeah. Do you name your instruments to kind of solidify that spirit in them?
Some of them, but not always. No. Like I have the one all black Rickenbacker that's Darth Vader.
Okay.
I have a Nash Wayfarer that I named Anne Hathaway. Like just some of them have random names, but not all of them.
Cool. Can I ask you about your tattoo sleeve? Is that okay? So I was kind of comparing our last interview to the recent pictures of you, and I noticed that you blacked out one of your arms. What went into that decision, and how do you feel about the permanence of tattoos in general, with consideration of that?
I've spent a lot of time getting tattooed over the last like 5-6 years in particular, and kind of using it as a form of therapy. Oddly enough, getting an arm blacked out was kind of an accident. I didn't necessarily intend to black out my arm. It was like 2015 or so. I had an appointment with somebody who specializes in blackwork tattoos, and they're the type of artist who doesn't want you necessarily telling them what to do. You just go to them if you like their work. Mm-hmm. And I went to them and I was like, I have this tattoo here I really want to get rid of, and this one here I want to get rid of, but I want to keep this one here, and I have this bird here, I want to keep that. And they were like, yeah. So I was going to the tattoo appointment, and it was in the Tenderloin in San Francisco, and as I was walking there, I saw a jumper, a suicide jumper, like straight out of a movie where there's someone up on top of a building, a cop up there trying to talk them down, and people down below. I didn't stick around to see what happened, but nonetheless, it like really shook me up. But I didn't want to cancel the appointment. I'd flown across the country, so I went into the tattoo appointment, and I was just like totally in my head, not thinking about what was going on. And the tattoo artist started tattooing me, and the tattoos I asked to keep, they just started going up over, and like were kind of being really shitty about it, and left me with half of a black arm. And I was like, oh fuck, what am I gonna do? So I had to have my friend go and black out the rest of it. But you know, whatever.
Yeah, it feels sort of like an experiment in the presence of okay, well, I was there, and this is what happened, and that's what I'm carrying with me. It's not the ideal thing. It rarely
It was
is.
a lesson, you know.
I guess in a certain way, if you're experiencing something that it kind of carries with it emotional trauma or emotional investment, I guess, I don't know, I've been in similar situations where I'm, you know, on my way to do something that requires a lot of thought or requires me like having myself very put together, and then something totally out of my control happens. Mm-hmm. Like in this case, seeing somebody get hit by a car, and arriving at the work thing I was supposed to do and doing my best to, you know, kind of talk through the explanation that I was supposed to talk through. And I found myself so distracted that I just couldn't do a good job about it. And I was really hard on myself for it at first, but I think I came around to feeling that I would rather be somebody who is emotionally affected by that, who emotionally invests in other people in that way, that if there's something traumatic that happens, I don't really want the ability to completely compartmentalize it. And I don't know, at least as far as tattoos can be symbolic.
I think there's something really valid to that. And I think about that oftentimes when people like criticize people for being rubberneckers. Like when you drive by an accident and you turn your head to see what's going on. People will like knock that, but it's like, what kind of shitty world would we live in if you were just to drive by accidents on the side of the road and not even turn to look and see if you could help out, you know? Like, you should be concerned if something fucked up happened on the side of the road, and you should look and you should see like, oh, could I do anything to help this situation? You know, you shouldn't just be oblivious to it and keep going.
In a similar sense, have you had, how have you reacted to people who've reached out to you or kind of expressed that your music has helped them, or to ask for like a further kind of like advocacy for what they're going through, as far as like needing emotional support or needing guidance?
I mean, I'm happy to meet people at shows, and like I really appreciate if someone comes up and wants to share a bit of their story, and if like anything I've done musically or whatever has helped them in any way or made a connection, that's like really meaningful, and that gives value to what I do. You know, there is a limit to I'm limited. I'm only human. You know, there's only so much I can do, and I don't have answers for people. And sometimes, with, like online, people want a little more than I can possibly give. But I'm always happy to try.
Well, and I think you acknowledge the perfect thing is that you're human, and 3-minute warning. Perfect transition. You're human, and I think a lot of times people project onto artists a deeper power than that, because your lyrics have resonated with them, then you're the answer to whatever problems they're having or whatever experience they're going through. And I think being a human and doing the best you can is the best you can do. But I think in an effort to kind of help people see that, you know, you are indeed a person, I like to play a little game.
Okay.
We have our D20. I have 20 questions. Do you want to give this thing a toss?
Hell yeah, I do.
Word. You can just drop it right on the ground so they can get a shot of it.
Do you want it on the ground or on the table? We're going.
You got a 20.
Yep.
Nobody's ever gotten a 20 before. So for context, in Dungeons and Dragons, you roll a 1, you massively fail at whatever it is you were trying to do. If you were trying to open the door or like sneak through something or like do something delicately, you just completely biff it. 20 is whatever you're trying to do. You've done it so pristinely and perfectly that the outcome is better than what you were even attempting.
I try.
Okay, so nobody's ever gotten this before, and the question is, glad we have the list up, pick any question and we'll both answer it. Take a look.
What? Oh, okay, so the question is a question?
The question is, you have the ability to select the question and you get to hear me answer it. You gonna grab it, see what you like?
What's a joke that always makes you laugh? I got
Perfect.
that one. All
Yeah.
right. So, a joke that always makes me laugh. I got a couple of these.
Yeah.
What kind of sport do you play with a wombat?
What kind of sport do you play with a wombat? I don't know what.
Wom.
It's so simple. It's so simple. I looked right past it.
What did one snowman say to the other snowman?
I don't know what.
Do you smell carrots?
So you're going to like mine because it has to do with completely misunderstanding the first joke.
Okay.
If I had a nickel for every time I didn't understand what was going on, I'd be like, where do I keep getting all these nickels?
I'll steal that.
Perfect. Well, I want to close out by asking you what's on your playlist right now. What musicians should we be listening to? Oh, I love it when the artist actually pulls out their phone.
It's otherwise my mind goes blank. Yeah.
I feel I actually have your answers from last time. You showed me Roland S. Howard and Vic Chestnut.
Oh.
And I got into both of them.
That's great. Well, okay, so I've been making a 2019 playlist. And currently this isn't songs that came out in 2019, just songs that I've been listening to in 2019.
Sure, I'm pulling mine up too.
So I have some XTC on here.
Okay.
I have some Christine and the Queens, Rolling Blackouts, Coastal Fever, Talking Straight is such a good fucking song. Julia Jacqueline, Juliana Hatfield, Mercury Rev, Guided by Voices, a little bit of Weezer.
Nice.
We're right next to Beverly Hills. Meat Puppets, a little bit of U2, Roxy Music, Squarehead, Hamilton, Lighthouser, and Rostam, Magnolia Electric Company, Les Savvy Fav, Psychedelic Furs, In Excess, Paul Westerberg, Nick Lowe, Portishead, Magnetic Field, Simon Garfunkel, and I've had the fucking Allman Brothers Midnight Rider stuck in my head for like the last 3 weeks straight. So I have not only the Allman Brothers version of Midnight Rider, but also the Willie Nelson version of Midnight Rider on my playlist here.
Very cool. I love how complete that answer was because I'm imagining a bunch of people hearing that and just like making their own Spotify playlists out of it. Yeah. So let's see. In addition to you, I've had Laura Stevenson. There's a rapper named Samus who I think is really awesome. She does really cool, like kind of almost like nerdcore rap.
Okay.
So it's full of a bunch of video game references that like I get. Color Me Wednesday I've been really into, and then the new album by Chad Van Galen and Hot Snakes are both super good.
Oh,
those are top of mind right now.
Very nice.
And kind of as a corollary to the same question, who's somebody who's not gotten enough attention that you feel like listeners should kind of focus in on?
Who's somebody who's not? I'll tell you an album that I feel like has not gotten enough attention just because I was talking about this last night. Evan Dando's record that came out in 2015, Baby on Board, is a flawless fucking record. I love that record so much. I only discovered it this year, but that's a record that I've been listening to all year long that I absolutely love.
Wow, very cool. I'm excited to check that one out. I haven't heard it. So I want to say thanks a lot for coming and doing this with us again. Thank you for performing. That was excellent.
Right on.
Thanks for playing that Mountain Goats cover that I totally understood right away and was tracking with.
My pleasure.
Can I give you some stuff?
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. We've got stickers. We've got these little handy dandy pins that we just made.
Nice.
And I've got your choice of shirt. We've got scoop neck or crew neck. What do you prefer?
Is there a size difference?
This one is a medium.
Okay.
And this one is also a medium.
I'm gonna go that one just because I'm never gonna wear a red shirt.
I appreciate the honesty. And I appreciate the implication that you're going to wear it. I made it with my hands, and I appreciate when it gets used.
Right on. Yeah.
Cool. Hey, thank you very much. This was really fun.
Right on. Yeah.
Yeah. Till 4 years from now, I suppose. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching A Fistful of Vinyl. I'm Alec. This is Laura Jane Grace, and thanks to the Troubadour for hosting us. Subscribe, like, and all this stuff. Okay. Bye.
Yeah, no shit. Well, see, the thing is that yesterday we had a really, really good show. Yeah. So we were like, we need to recreate those exact conditions yesterday. So yesterday I had 6 shots of espresso and ate Chipotle, and that was all I ate. So again, I was like, all right, Chipotle, 6 shots of espresso.